Hey, what's up, everybody? So, we're not welcoming back to a previous series or anything. Instead, I am just going to have a game playing in the background, and I'm going to go over some things that I would like to see in future games of the NHL series. And hopefully we can see some of these types of things happen either in NHL21, which at this point is basically just going to be, I hope that they've done these things, because by now NHL21 is probably pretty far into production. And if not this one, then maybe for 22. Now, 22 is going to be on the next generation of consoles, and 22 will be the next generation. 21 will be the last to come out on the current generation of consoles. So, bearing that in mind, some of the things that I may suggest might not be possible with current generation systems. So, just because of memory and whatnot. So maybe they're better suited for the NHL 22. Let's go over some stuff. I'm not going to go over a whole lot when it comes to the Be a Pro mode, because that really just needs to be completely overhauled, and people have talked about that to death. A lot of the things that I want to talk about pertain to the creation systems and the franchise and general manager modes. There's a lot of stuff that I've been thinking about for a long time that I never seem to hear people bring up in any of their videos. So maybe this will hit a chord with you. So the live presentation of the games. Honestly, I think for the most part, I think they're done very well. I know that there's people that have their gripes and whatnot, but I think for the most part, it's pretty good. One, it's the only hockey game that we can play right now, so, beggars can't be choosers to a degree, but I think that what we've been given, especially this year, has been pretty good. The main thing, it needs to be cleaned up because of the graphic glitches and weird stuff that happens, like jittery players, how they clip in and out of each other and other things, or like somebody scores a goal and then either they or their teammate, while standing with their hands above their heads and their legs not moving, rubber band themselves to their fellow players for celebration, to hug or pat each other on the back, and or they score and they just do these weird unmoving leg traveling around the rink, which is just bizarre. So some of the physics there are just screwed up, and it's always a little off-putting. It's not the end of the world, it's just a video game, but these are things that need to be cleared up, because it's definitely weird when it happens. Now, here's a little tidbit. As I was playing a game earlier, we had the guest commentator of Snoop Dogg for the umpteenth time. Now, I think it's great to have Snoop Dogg, as a guest, but what sucks is that unless there's something that I haven't encountered yet, and I've played this game a lot, it's only Snoop Dogg who shows up multiple times through every single season, or just randomly playing. Doesn't matter what mode it is. Like, how many times is Snoop Dogg going to be a guest and say the same things over and over and over again? So my suggestion is either get more celebrity guests than just one person. Get multiple celebrity guests. Or if you can't do that because it's too expensive, then just have regular voice actors come in and do guest commentary, playing the roles of, say, a professional scout or some kind of an analyst, where they can be talking about something that relates to either one of the teams that are playing. Say you've got some hot shot rookie that's been on fire and in the last game he had a big hat trick, right? And now, or he was the first overall pick in the previous draft. Well, maybe you have somebody who's a scout, and a lot of the commentary and questions can be about what it takes to be a successful scout, why it's so important to go all over the world, what places seem to be, becoming a bigger hotbed for developing hockey talent, stuff like that. Or whatever, it doesn't just have to be about scouting, but, anything that's, relating to a game, like, say you've got like a player with value that's been put on the trade block that's playing in the game. Maybe they could be talking about the trade deadline that's coming up, whatever. But have a guest commentator that pops in that's, some kind of a hockey expert in one form or another, and have them chat about hockey stuff, like behind-the-scenes hockey-related things. Not only would this be more realistic because you get this anyway, like for instance, like retired players, if you can pull that off. Like I said, if you can't, because you can't afford it, and we just have people that are playing roles, then let's just have them as quote-unquote experts in these fields and talking about whatever it is they're talking about. Just to spice it up, just so that it's not the same guest commentator all the time. And it's also breaking up the monotony of the commentary as it is, which really hasn't been as bad as it has been in previous years, but it could be better. So how about when you're playing, we're about to play a game, I've heard people say we want a warm-up mode. And I say maybe a warm-up mode. It would definitely have to be something that's optional because I could definitely see that getting old real quick. I think if you chose to have a little warm-up mode, then, that would be cool as long as it had some kind of an impact on your players. Maybe give them a little bit of a boost if you go through whatever the motions of the warm-up mode are, like have it like a little mini game that there's something that you're supposed to do. You're supposed to loop around and get shots off or whatever, and maybe it'll give your team an overall like a +1 in their overall stats or whatever, or just have it be its own little mode just to get you ready to play the game. But I don't think it's super necessary, but I think it's something that could be fun to add in, as long as it wasn't something that would become tedious. And it also can't be something that's going to be like 10 minutes long, just like something that you can do for like a minute or two, just something brief, because it's just a warm-up for a game. However, what I think they have to include are things such as Stanley Cup celebrations or conference, victory celebrations, like in the beginning of the following season. You have the whole banner raising ceremony. They used to do this, at least with the Stanley Cup teams, that you would, the little cut scene beforehand would be the team raising their Stanley Cup banner. It's kind of absurd that we don't see that. That should definitely be happening. And not only that, but if a player is having his number retired, why not have that, show that number up in the rafters? Or if a player that's been on your team retires, and say there has to be a certain level of significance to their contribution to the team. It can't be someone that's just been like a bench warmer for 10 years. But like, let's say there's someone who's had had success or has been a captain on your team for a few years or whatever. I don't know exactly how to figure that out. I'm not a programmer, but if you have a player that retires, have some kind of it doesn't even have to be the first game. Maybe one game during the season that is a tribute to so and so. Joe Smith retired, and here's our it's our Joe Smith tribute game. And that could also be a thing, which I'll get into in a moment, that can help boost the team for specific games. But you know what? I'll just get in with it now. we definitely have to have things where, all right, so they have their special nights like your bobblehead nights and your T-shirt nights, and it's cool when you're watching the game and you see that, like, oh, there's the bobblehead, or there's the player, or the fans wearing the the special shirt that day, a specific player shirt or whatever. Like, that's cool looking. I think that should also have some kind of an effect on the team, that maybe because it's a special day, and this can go into play if you're having a celebration of a retired player, or like I said, a banner raising or whatever. It should be maybe a game where your players get a morale boost going into the game. And, your morale boost affects your overall playing. So maybe if you've had some players that were like, disengaged or disgruntled or whatever, maybe that game, that the positive lift in mood, the positive morale boost for that specific game, maybe that can stem off their bad moods and maybe get them on the track of turning that around. You never know. It's some kind of a system that can be put into place. But have it affect more than just oh, here's something happening in the background. So speaking of things that happen in the background, custom soundtracks. As soon as we went off of the NHL 14, as soon as the games went to the Xbox, Xbox 360, Xbox One. As soon as it went to Xbox One and PS4, there's no more custom soundtracks. And that really bummed me out, because nothing for me was more fun while playing, other than playing the game itself, but nothing added to the game more than hearing a goal celebration, the entrance music, even the commercials that may be playing, the songs that are playing for power plays and penalty kills and all that stuff. Like, all the stuff you're able to add in. There were people that would make a list and make them downloadable, and it would be all of the team's realistic goal horns and team introductions, individual hockey commercials that would be taking place. So it's like you can go to Montreal and hear things that are, that are featured in the area of Montreal, the same types of commercials and stuff. And or if you're at a Devils game and you're hearing, what is it, HG Barnabas Bank or whatever the hell it is, but hearing local commercials, something you can add yourself. And I don't see why, especially if they're going to go to a new console, why they can't include that again. Now, if you're going to be playing games online against other people, maybe you can't. Those soundtracks have to be omitted, and that's fine. You just can't use them online. Big deal. But what you can do is you can play that on your own. And if I'm using copyrighted music, then obviously if I broadcast that on YouTube, well, I can't. The video can't be monetized. It's simple as that. Just like, technically I get a warning right off the bat. Like, I can't have music playing in the background while I'm doing a live broadcast because, it might be a copyright strike. And that's something you can't help. Like, what if you're broadcasting in your living room and outside a car drives by and they're blasting music? Like, that wasn't something that you could help, But again, if you have your custom soundtrack, that's on you. But if you're playing on your own, solo, like I generally do, then why can't I have that feature? It makes it so unique to yourself and makes it, or makes it super realistic, depending on, if you're trying to play realistic NHL or having custom teams. It just depends on what you want to do. So speaking of banner raising and whatnot that I mentioned a moment ago, when you win the Stanley Cup, please give us multiple Stanley Cup victory celebrations, like, not just the same sequence every single time you win it, or if you lose and you watch the other team win it. Because it's just like, all right, I've seen this, and it's skippable. If you had, like, I don't know, 3 or 4, and it doesn't have to be, like, massive differences, but just like the way that, you know, your captain poses with the Stanley Cup and then picks the Stanley Cup afterwards and lifts it over his head, or, you know, when your MVP goes and picks up his, you know, his trophy, you know, when he gets the Art Ross, like, just tweak it a little bit. Just get different things, like players just doing little small things instead of, like I said, instead of just a repeat of the same deal over and over and over again. If you had a particularly violent Stanley Cup final when the guys are going into the handshake, then maybe focus in on 2 guys. Maybe they fought a bunch of times, and like just have a clip where, like, when those 2 go towards each other, that it's like you see them shake hands and kind of, like, you know, make it obvious that they're acknowledging that there's a significance to them speaking to one another. Just something different. And then on top of that, the Stanley Cup photo. Okay, please give us different poses for that. Let them all get together and do their pose and all, but it doesn't have to be 20 different poses. You know, just give us like 3 or 4 different poses, you know, arrangements of how everybody's standing and whatever they're doing, if they're giving the peace sign or the #1 sign or, you know, the devil horns, or they're just smiling or whatever they're doing. Just give us a few different things that they do. And then when the photo is taken, let us save that photo so that we can view it later on. Because how much fun would it be, especially if you're playing franchise mode, and you win several Stanley Cups, and then you can go back and look into, you know, say your general manager portfolio, and you can look through your Stanley Cup victory photos and see the different players that you've had over the years. Even though right now a lot of them look very, very similar, there's still, especially if it's created players that are included, like, there's players that are going to stand out, you know? So that would be fun. You look through and say you've won it like 4 or 5 times because you're really good, and you're scanning through like, oh, I remember that lineup or this or that. Oh, this guy was great, so I had to trade him or retired or whatever. It's a cool thing to add, you know what I mean? All right, so speaking of GM mode and franchise mode, number 1, just add more optional features. The more that you can add, and again, like I said, optional, so you can turn them off if you don't want to use them, but allow for more stuff to be included to spice the game up. For example, press conferences. We should have press conferences, and it should be an option. Like, your owner can ask you if you would like to have a press conference because of whatever different reasons. If the team makes a trade, if the team is on a losing streak, if you change a coach, anything along those lines. Or it could just be a random press conference, like you haven't addressed the public in a while and they want you to do that. And then you've got options. You can either, and depending on what the situation is that the press conference is warranting it. Like if it's a change of coaches, you would have to handle it. But what if it's, you know, a player got traded, or you've been on a losing streak, or you had a big win, and you opt to have your coach or your player speak instead of yourself? Well, this is how it could work. If you do it yourself, you have a risk-reward system as you're given a dialogue options to satisfy the fans through the questions of the reporters that are there. So either you're answering reporters' questions, or you're given a series of dialogue options of what you want to talk about and what the types of points that you think are the most important to stress to the fans. And that's if you do it yourself. Or you can opt to trust your coach or trust your team captain or an alternate or a fan favorite to go ahead and speak. And this would require a charisma attribute. And that charisma attribute, I think, is going to be something that's not just for your players, but also for your coach and maybe for the owner, but I think that would be more of up to you as the player to make the choices for dialogue. But if your coaches and your players need something like a leadership / charisma attribute, I would just call it charisma. And that attribute is going to impact quite a lot. I think it will impact moments like this where you're in a press conference and how well they're able to relate to the fans, and then fan happiness could go up or down because of it. Merch sales could go up or down. Team prestige could go up or down. National and local popularity can go up and down. You know, these are ways to manipulate these things. Even if your team is kind of playing badly, but you're able to have, successful press conferences, because you have good leadership and charisma within your coaches and your players, that you can convince the fans to stick with them even in the bad times, or pump them up even more because they're playing really well. But that has to be included, not just press conferences, but like I said, that charisma attribute has to be added. Because it's also, right now, I don't know exactly what determines if a player is a good leader or not. There's nothing on their, at least unless I've missed it every single time I've looked through their bios, but there's nothing anywhere that lists specifically like, this affects your leadership. Is it poise? I don't know what the hell it is. Is it discipline? I don't know. All I know is that when you look at morale, it'll say something is highlighted as a presence or a leader. But that's not even someone who's ever pegged as like the game doesn't automatically try to make those people a captain or an alternate captain. So does that really mean anything about leadership, or is that just in the locker room? So if you have something for charisma, the higher that attribute, the more you can see how good that player would be to be on your team, to be a leader for your team, to keep the locker room calm, etc. So, moving on from there. Third jerseys. Third jerseys should only be available when your merchandise store is at least level 3. So if your team's store makes it to level 3, then you can have a third jersey. Yes, maybe your team automatically starts off with a level 3 team store. That's fine. Then you can have a third jersey right off the bat. But I think the importance here is when you upgrade your team store to level 3, you now have a reward system. Look at that big overtime goal. But now you have a reward system where, okay, you achieve level 3. With that, not only are there more options to sell things, but now you have a third jersey, which during either the off season or maybe during the preseason or at some point during the season, you can have, yes, a press conference or some kind of a public conference or something. The exact word is eluding me, but a public address or whatever, and you can show off your third jersey. And maybe you already designed the third jersey before before you start your franchise, or maybe you create it right when that option comes up, that you can go into your options for your jersey editing, and then you can create the third jersey at that point. And then you introduce it, and again, now it adds to national popularity. It adds to fan happiness. It adds to, your prestige, all that stuff. Now it matters that you have a third jersey, not just something for you to look at while you're playing the game, or just something that says, "Oh, look, third jersey in the." There's a third jersey in the team store that's available for sale. Like that's great. You know, like okay, so that third jersey's there, but it, you know, now it actually has a real impact. It really honestly matters now. Stanley Cup championship photo, I already mentioned that. Yeah, like I said, that's a big thing for me. I want to be able to look back at things. Okay, so here's something else I heard people saying. We want real coaches and we want real general managers. Now, the problem with that, of course, wow, my defense is horrible. Look at that. A 69 compared to their 80, so this is going to be a tough game. Not that I'm playing, I'm just letting it do itself, but it's going to be a toughie. All right. But the problem is, for those who aren't aware, and I'm sure plenty of you are, there's licensing issues to get people's likeness into any of these games. And it's one thing if you work through the NHL and the NHLPA, you can get all the players. That's fine, even though they need to get more of these likenesses, accurate, the facial scans. God, they need to be better. Because there's so many players that like I've seen come out there like, yeah, some look just like him. And then I saw Corey Schneider, current Devils backup goalie, and saw him without his mask on, and it was like Frankenstein was out there. It was frightening. So I understand if you can't have real coaches, but if you can't have real coaches, please add more character models and faces. Like, not just for when you see these people on the bench, but also like when you're going through the hiring and firing of coaches and you're interviewing people and it's the same like 10 different people over and over and over. It's like, oh, I just interviewed the same guy. Oh wait, no, it's his twin. No, it's his triplet. No, it's his quadruplet. Like, you're seeing the same people a million times. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, just they're not real people. They're just drawings. Like, add more facial art. Like, just put more in there, please. Like, it's ridiculous. I don't know. It's just something silly. All right. So, also, fix the trading system. Way too often. I'll be sitting there getting these insanely lopsided offers. And it's like, oh, give up your next 2 first-round picks and this pretty good prospect and a 4th-round pick, and we'll give you this guy who has 1 year left on his contract. He's going to cost $9 million. He has an overall of 80, which is, halfway decent. But, and we'll give you a 6th-round pick as well for next year. It's like, wait, really? You expect me to give up a prospect, 2 first-round picks, and a 3rd-round pick, and a good player? Like, it's insane. Or sometimes I've seen it where, we'll give you some player who is like at the end of his contract and we want your 1st round and 2nd round or whatever. It's just super lopsided and ridiculous. Now, if I offer something that I think is a pretty fair trade, like if I'm trying to get, if I'm trying to get a player, maybe it's a prospect, right? And I'm saying, I know he's probably going to be good, but he's unproven. I want to offer a 2nd-round pick and a 5th-round pick in exchange for this player who, really looking at it, like, I could probably get, realistically, in real NHL, you could probably just trade a 3rd or maybe even a 4th and a 5th for this guy. And it's like, nope, we refuse. Here's a guy that they really want, and you put him in there. Like, he's highlighted as meeting the team's needs. And then you get a message saying, like, this isn't a player that we're interested in or whatever. And it's like, the only way that you can get a trade offer to them that they'll accept is if you make it lopsided for what you're giving up. And that's nuts. That's completely ridiculous. Now, to that, I think that what can be done to tweak it is go back to that system, and I don't remember which year it was, go back towards something along the lines of the system where you were collecting cell phones per general manager in the league. And you build a relationship with the different general managers. And the better your relationship, the easier the trade is to accomplish. Now, of course, it's not going to be, you know, something where it's like, you know, hey, give me your first round pick for a bag of pucks. Like, they're not going to fall for that. But they'll be way more lenient, you know, and make that little trade value bar, you know, make either a little more sense or just give you a little more room instead of just straight up, nope, we're not going to accept this. We're not going to accept this unless you give us all of your blood in your body. So, and not only that, but that gets to the trade deadline and help make the trade deadline a big deal. It should be a big deal. It shouldn't just be another day on the calendar. There should be a day where you can contact, like I said, if you're going through those phones, or maybe you're not going on phones, maybe you're just going on your PC and you're looking up all these different general managers, and especially the ones that you've got a good rapport with, that maybe there's a deal that you can make between each other where you can be honest with one another of what kind of players you're trying to pick up instead of feeling like you're trying to trick somebody. And if a player's like, for instance, if someone is trying to get we're trying to get a strong draft pick, and, you know, we're looking to get rid of this guy, and we're looking to get rid of this guy because he costs too much. He's hurting. He's maybe a GM will be honest with you and say, like, he's been in, you know, trouble in the locker room or whatever. So you would know if they're offering, he's like, hey, this is what we're offering. Maybe you can flip him to another team. You know, like, you give up this, like, you give up a good pick, we'll give you this player, and they say that player's got an overall of like 79, right? You can get something for that. You can find a trade for that player. So maybe you can turn that around for something better. Or maybe you need that player as you're making a playoff push, and you'll deal with his crappy attitude, and maybe his attitude will change just because he needs a change of scenery. You never know. But put that kind of stuff in there to make trades and the trade deadline like more manageable and more fun instead of something that just feels like it's tedious. Because right now it feels tedious. It's like going, you know, over, let me try this trade. Nope, let me try this one. Nope, and it just drives you nuts. Included in contracts. I've heard people say no trade contracts, no movement clauses. Now, that's interesting, and I would be down with that, but I definitely think it's something that would have to be an option that you can turn off, because I think that could become way too complex and could end up to the point where, just like in the real NHL, where you're like, oh my God, I hate this. You know, I hate that I've got these players on these contracts, and knowing the game system, it might turn into a thing where, you know, that's another reason why players won't sign, is because you have to sign them to these, you know, no movement clauses, and if they don't fix the trading system, that's just another thing that's going to be really difficult when you got players, you know, that are costing you an arm and a leg and aren't performing. You know, if you can't trade them, and now it's like you add to that this, you know, this trade, the trade and movement clauses, like it's gonna make your hair explode out of your head. Trust me. But it could be a cool thing. So it's been half an hour, so bear with me. What was I talking about before, guys? Look, it's Snoop Dogg again. It'll be the same conversation that we heard like 3 games ago. I think he was a guest. All right, so I'm nearly done. I know this has been a long video for people who are just trying to hear a, you know, simple chit chat, but it is what it is, guys. I do all this live. I don't go back and edit. So anyway, the creation station. So when it comes to all of the creatable things in this game, they've definitely given you a lot, but I think there's some simple things that they can add to make it better. I do mostly simulated seasons, and I really enjoy creating teams, creating players, and I want more options than what I have. They need to have more options. Like, for an example, mascots. Put in more mascots. We've only got this limited number of mascots, so it's like, if I can replace 30 teams in the NHL, or 30, 31, 32 teams that I can include that are created teams, I should be able to make at least that many unique mascots. Even if it's a combination of like 15 different mascot heads and 15 different mascot bodies and 15 different mascot pants, and you can mix and match however you want, but it's got to be more than what they have right now, because what they have right now is like, oh, good, like, 20 teams have almost the same looking mascot. Like, oh, this one has a dragon head with a cowboy body or something. It's like, that's about as much as you can do, and that's just silly. And they don't, like, most of them don't even relate to, like, a lot of the options of what you can name your teams or what the logos are. So why not have more mascot options that relate to that? But that's just one thing. Speaking of logos, more logos for creating teams. Like, yes, there's a lot. They have plenty, but they add like a handful every year. But a lot of times it's like, oh, here's another version of a bear. Here's another version of some kind of a shark, or a barracuda. And it's not enough. Like, if you're trying to make a whole bunch of unique teams, like, nice goal. If you're trying to make a bunch of unique teams, then you need a lot more of a variety than what you're offering. And again, it's just simple, flat block artwork. It's not like you're asking for super complicated logo designs. Now, to add to that, why not make a very simple logo creator? It could be something simple with like simple shapes, simple objects that you could put together and make your own unique logo. Just work within a square or a circle or whatever, and you just place these objects. Maybe like one object is a shield, and then on top of the shield you layer a cat face. Just whatever, just simple things, and then you can color each one of these parts individually. Or take one of the pre-created logos as it is, like that, like one of the logos you see of the two teams playing here, but be able to like add to it. Even if it's just, I took that hawk's face, and around it I put like 5 stars around it to represent the city that they're in. Whatever, just give us little options like that to create our own unique logos. And along with logos, goalie mask designs. Good Lord. Can you guys please, EA Sports, please add more unique goalie mask designs? Because right now, what if we had the same designs for like 4 years straight? If not more. It's been the same. Like, you go in, it's like, okay, now great, there's more international teams and ECHL teams that you can use those realistic masks, and that's cool. But if I'm creating a team, every single time, like, there's a new goalie, they have the same standard gray and black design mask, like every single one of them. So it's like you got two teams playing against each other, and like they've got the same mask. I have to go in and edit all the teams and all the goalies. But then as soon as the goalie gets traded and he's off that team, they got another guy comes in and he's back to that same gray and black mask. There should be a hell of a lot more paint jobs on these masks and be available of different colors, different backgrounds, different designs. Or, hey, how about allow us to have a base background of the mask, and then on the sides of the mask, allow us to put either the team logo or some other pre-created designs and let us place them there. You know, let us make our own goalie masks. There's a very simple way to do that. And again, I don't even think that's asking for much of the current consoles. I really don't. I think it's something that you can make very simple. Or even if you could do something along the lines of what Rockstar did, where you could create like your gang logos and I forget what their online thing is called, but you're able to design it on your computer, and then you can import it directly to your account and then bring it up in your game. Like maybe you can do that. You can design it and then upload it to their server and bring it into your game. Because that way, if say you were trying to design a penis, like they could block it and be like, no, that design's not going to work. You know, like, even though I think that would be silly if you're just making a team to, you know, play on your own and you have something that's, you know, risque. But, you know, at least this way, maybe it'll be possible for you to have a unique team with your own logo and be able to play people online. But if nothing else, let us create our own logos and our own goalie masks. Like, that's huge for me. It stuff drives me nuts we don't have it. So, speaking of creating logos for teams and all this stuff, how about create a league? We can already replace every single team in the NHL with our own custom teams. So not only do I think we should be able to do that, I think we should also be able to replace all the AHL teams as well. And again, that can't be that much harder. You know, just have this, even if you don't have the option to change the rosters. They're like, say I replace the Binghamton Devils or the Lehigh Valley Phantoms with the custom team. Well, then we're replacing the jersey, the location, the logo, but we have to keep that Phantoms or Devils roster if you're playing franchise, and that's fine. But the other thing is, why do we have to play NHL? Why does it have to be the NHL? How about allow us to create a completely different league? It could be a World League Hockey, or the world, you know, like the world, like the World Hockey League. Even though I know there's a WHL, but you know, something along those lines, or Universal Hockey League, or beer, you know, whatever your beer league is, you know, and have it so that, like, yes, it could be an equivalent of the size and scope of the NHL, but it's just not the NHL. It's a different league. So maybe you can have an international, like a team of 31, 32 teams, but they're all over the world, you know, and that would be cool, you know, just a little extra thing. And you can also make it different tiers of how big your league is. What if, like I said, what if it is just a beer league? What if you decide to have a 20-team beer league, and when you're creating things, you're also creating the arenas, and the arenas are the size of whatever your league is supposed to be. Like, maybe you have a bunch of, like, what looks like local hockey rinks or outdoor pond hockey rinks. You know, it doesn't have to be all these big NHL size arenas. Just have these smaller ones, smaller crowds. Instead of, maybe you can't have the design of the team painted in the middle of the ice like you would on an NHL team, but maybe you have a big banner behind the goals of your team logos. You know, something, you know, small level like that. And my team is getting crushed right now. So what else was going on? Oh, and along with that, create a trophy. So at least give us like a few pre-made trophies for players to win in place of a Stanley Cup. So instead of, no matter, you know, all these, like these teams, I have this whole league of created teams. Well, instead of them going after the Stanley Cup, then maybe they're going after the Johnson Memorial Trophy or whatever. Like, you know, just you can name it, but even if they have their own pre-rendered, pre-created trophy designs, and they can be realistic looking, and or there could be some that are realistic, and then it is EA, and you know you can get silly, and maybe like if you have a beer league, then maybe the winning is like a golden beer stein, you know, just something along those lines, something fun. And lastly, yes, this is the last thing. We've going on for 45 minutes, but we finally hit the end. Instead of blank silhouettes of players, especially for created players, when you're looking at their profile or when their pictures pop up, like, and you just see a blank black silhouette of a character, allow us to have a photo mode where, especially when we're creating a player, or if we're playing franchise and we go over to the screen where it says edit player, where right now you can only, like, especially if it's a EA created player, you can just change their beards. That's the only thing you can change right now. But let's say it also includes a photo mode where you can take a picture, a close-up picture of the guy without his helmet and gear on, just his jersey, and that becomes the player photo, and that's what pops up in their profile. That's what pops up during the game, you know, so it's unique. So especially, like, you know, you're going to have a lot of nobodies on here that are like, you know, players that get drafted, and maybe they're like a third-tier player. But like when you're playing, like at least for me, if I'm playing and there's a star player on the another team that keeps popping up all the time, and it's not, even though he's not on my team, I would like to have an option to go into edit and make a photo of him so that it pops up and, you know, it's a little more realistic because that particular guy has been awesome, you know. And I don't think that would take that much. I really don't. I don't think it would be difficult to pull off. So, but definitely, like, oh, and that's the thing. They already do that for Be a Pro. So why in the hell can't you do that for your regular created players? Why is Be a Pro the only option where you can use that? Because you're only having one photo popping up? I don't know. But anyway, guys, so that's it. There's my little wish list. Maybe not so little, but it's a lot of stuff that I don't ever hear anyone else talk about. So tell me what you think. Comment. Give me your ideas. What do you like that I suggested? What do you not like? What would you change? What can you add to it? Like I said, I know I didn't go into most modes. I didn't get into online versus modes and stuff like that because that's not really my expertise. It's not really the stuff that I dive into much. And I think for the most part, other people have definitely done a great job discussing all that and talking about it. So I don't think I would have much more to add than what other people have already put in there. So, and again, I think most of the stuff that I'm suggesting is reasonable. I think a lot of it you could do for NHL21 if they had time. But I definitely think that all of this is something that could be added to NHL 22. So, all right, guys, so that's it from me. Enough of my babbling. Like I said, please comment. Tell me what you think. Give me your thoughts, and let's discuss this stuff because I love the NHL series. It's had its bumps along the way, but I think this was a really good game. You know, NHL 20, I think, has been a lot of fun. I think they did a lot right. I just think there's a lot that they could have done better, and there's things that they could add to make it even more fun. And like I said, Be a Pro needs to be completely overhauled, and I don't think there's a lot of people that would disagree with that. So, anyway, guys, I hope that you're all staying safe and healthy and that you're washing your hands in these crazy times and being smart. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe, hit that notification button. Yeah, hit the notification bell. Do all the YouTube stuff that you hear 1,000 times a day from every YouTuber that's ever existed. And until the next one, as always, peace. And my team finally scores a goal.